Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. I want to thank you for joining me today, and if you're a returning listener, I want to say a big thank you for your continued support. If this is your first time listening to my podcast, welcome. It's great to have you on board. So without further ado, let's get started on today's story. Ireland Crimes and Mysteries is presented by Go Loud, Ireland's leading audio publisher and the home of Irish podcasts. Find new episodes on the podcast first on the Go Loud app and on your favourite podcast platform. This episode of Ireland Crimes and Mysteries is supported by Shopify. That little purple shop pay button has changed the way we all shop online by making checkout faster than ever. Whenever you see it, you know you are in good hands because that store is powered by Shopify. It is simple and it is incredibly effective. That is the Shopify difference. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of brands around the world, from global names to people launching their very first business. With hundreds of beautiful templates, you can build a store that matches your brand without touching a line of code. You can manage everything in one place, from inventory and payments to analytics and marketing. And that iconic purple shop pay button, it's why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet, helping reduce abandoned carts and boost sales. Your customers already know it, trust it, and love it. If you want to see fewer abandoned carts, it's time to head over to Shopify. Sign up for your €1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.ie. That's shopify.ie and see what you can accomplish with Shopify by your side. Hey guys, I just wanted to say before I start this week's podcast, if you're enjoying Ireland Crimes and Mysteries, right, and you'd like to see a live show, would you mind filling out the survey in the episode description? I'd really appreciate it. And you never know, this live show might become a reality. Friday, the 10th of April, 2026, 8 o'clock in the morning, Clonmorris Cemetery, Burranacoola, County Leitrim. The Garda Technical Bureau are already there. Professor Linda Mulligan, the Chief State Pathologist, is present. An Environmental Health Officer from the HSC, undertakers and members of the Farrell family, including his 5 children, watching their father's grave being opened for the second time. It is not something any family should have to do, and yet the Farrells asked for this. They campaigned for it. They lobbied politicians, hired independent forensic experts, sat in meeting rooms with Garda commissioners and ministers, went on national television. They fought for 6 years, through grief and COVID and closed doors, to get the state to do what is being done on this cold April morning. Open the grave, look again, find out what really happened. His name was Liam Farrell. He was 87 years old, a retired farmer and factory worker, a widower, a daily mass goer, a man who had lived his whole life in Rooskey on the Leitrim-Roscommon border, in the same house since 1947. He went to the pub on the Saturday night, as he had done every dry weekend of his adult life. He waved to the local taxi man on his way home, and then, somewhere in the dark, between the road and his back door, something happened that his family cannot explain, and that no one in authority has been able to explain either. His body was found the following afternoon, covered in blood. His coat and blazer removed and rolled into a tight bundle placed on either side of him. His shoes and socks taken off and left nearby. His watch broken. His wallet, which had several €100 in cash, gone. Never found, despite searches of surrounding bogs and the Shannon River. A routine post-mortem concluded he died of a heart attack. A file went to the DPP. No prosecution was directed, and Liam Farrell was buried. His family never accepted it, and 6 years later, his remains were brought back up out of the ground so the state could take the proper look it should have taken on the night he died. This is the story of Liam Farrell. This is what his family say happened, and this is what we are all still waiting to find out. To understand why this case matters and why the Farrell family refused to let it go, you need to understand who Liam Farrell was. Born and raised in Rooskey, he never left.
His whole life on the Leitrim-Roscommon border, in the townsland of Ockamore, just outside the village. Living in the same house since 1947, he had deep, deep roots in Rooski. He was a man of total routine and absolute loyalty to the place that made him. Standing at 6'2", strong as a horse, even at 87, hands like shovels from a lifetime of physical work, still mowing his own lawn, saving the hay, tending his cattle. Age had not slowed him in any way. He worked for decades at Handley's factory in Rooski, which started as a mineral factory in the 1950s and eventually became Irish Country Meats. He loved what that factory meant to the village, the employment, the life it gave the area. When it closed, he felt the loss of it. Rooski had gone quiet, he thought, and he was right. He was a farmer alongside his factory work, and he was, in the best possible sense, predictable. If you needed to find Liam Farrell at any given time, you knew where he would be and what he would be doing, mowing or at mass or in the village for a pint on a dry weekend night. He married Maureen. They raised 5 children in a house full of life and music. Liam and Maureen used to sing together while they worked on the farm. A happy house, the ordinary kind of happy that holds families together across decades. Then Maureen developed multiple sclerosis. Liam became her carer. He retired from the factory and gave that time to her. There was no complaints from him. He showed her nothing but love and care. When Maureen passed away in 2002, he was left alone for the first time in his adult life. But he adapted. He kept their traditions. He drove up to Donegal, a place they had always visited together. 2 of his adult children lived within 10 miles. He had grandchildren. He had his community. He had Marley, his golden retriever, a gentle giant who people said had Liam's own personality. His brother Mel, who turned 90 this past May, describes Liam as a pure gentleman who did not have an enemy in the world. Nobody has ever offered a single contradiction to that. He was a daily mass goer, meticulous about his property. He never left his back gate open, careful with electricity, one small light on at the most, and careful with money in the specific way of a man who had earned everything he had. He kept a wallet with a few €100 in cash for nights out, money set aside for rounds with smaller amounts loose in his pocket. He always knew what he had and where it was. Every dry weekend he walked the 10 minutes into Rooski for a few pints, home for a cup of tea, up for mass, predictable as I said, steady and safe. That was Liam Farrell. That was the man who put on his dark suit, his light blue shirt and his dark wine-coloured tie on the evening of Saturday the 11th of January 2020 and walked into the village for what would be the last time. Saturday the 11th of January 2020, as I said, was a dry night, which meant Liam was going out. His last conversation with his son Brendan was at around 1:50 that afternoon. Brendan said his father was in great form, nothing unusual, looking forward to meeting his friends and neighbours. He left Ockamore just before 9 o'clock and made the 10-minute walk into the village. He crossed the road to the riverside and walked against the traffic, his usual route in. He went first to Reynolds pub. Inside he spotted Anne Vaughan, a woman he had known for 30 years. Her sister had recently died and Liam had only heard the news the day before, so he went straight over to sympathise. That was the kind of man he was. He made an effort. Then he settled at the bar and slowly nursed a pint. Anne noticed a stranger sit in beside him. She had never seen this man before, and in a village like Rooski, a new face would stand out. She later gave a deposition about what she had seen. The man was around 60, had whitish hair and was clean shaven. He wore a dark suit and a distinctive hat. He looked kind of like a man that worked with horses. He was drinking a bottle of Coke. He wasn't drinking any alcohol. Anne watched them in conversation at the bar. It looked easy and relaxed. She commented to her daughter that Liam must know this man. She could not hear what they were saying. She had no sense of where he was from. Nobody that night recognised him. According to the family's own testimony, the concern in the pub that night went beyond Anne Vaughan. Two women were so unsettled by the stranger's presence and so worried about Liam going out into the night with this man nearby that they followed Liam out of Reynolds to make sure he was all right. After a while, the stranger left Reynolds. Anne watched to see which way he went. He did not cross the Shannon Bridge, and he did not go in the direction of Liam's house because she would have seen him. Then she lost sight of him. She went back inside, then a few minutes later found herself uneasy enough to check again. She walked up to the Weir Lodge next door, opened the door and looked in. Liam was at the counter. Fine. She went back to Reynolds. The concern had washed away. That was the last time Anne Vaughan saw Liam Farrell alive. It had been around 10:30 when Liam moved next door to the Weir Lodge. He socialised with locals, had a few drinks with a very close friend. Around 5 pints in total across the whole night. He was not drunk. Everyone who spoke to him said the same thing afterwards. He was in great form and he was completely himself. At midnight he left the Weir Lodge. He crossed the road to the riverside and began the walk home along the river. A local taxi man saw him on the road, walking, and waved at him, and he waved back. He was flying, as people put it later. He was grand. He was just going home. That was 12:15 in the morning. Liam Farrell never made it through his back door. Across the fields from Liam's house, a neighbour was up late watching television. The film was My Left Foot, the 1989 Daniel Day-Lewis picture about the Irish writer and painter Christy Brown, who was born with cerebral palsy and learned to communicate and create using his left foot. The neighbour knew it well enough to know exactly where they were in the story when something outside pulled their attention away from the screen. At 1:20 in the morning, Marley started barking. Marley was not a dog who barked without cause. A golden retriever, calm and gentle by nature, the family described him as a gentle giant. He was not, by any account, an anxious or reactive dog. He did not bark at shadows or at passing cars in the night. But on this night, Marley barked persistently, urgently, for 15 minutes straight. Not a single bark and then silence. 15 minutes of continuous, agitated barking from a dog the people who knew him said would not bark without good reason. The neighbour could fix the time precisely because of the film. The barking began during a specific scene, the book launch scene in My Left Foot, and that small incidental detail became one of the most important pieces of information in the entire case. A neighbour up late, noting what was on their television screen at the moment a dog began to bark. That gave investigators a timestamp they could anchor everything to. 12:40 in the morning. Now think about what that means in terms of the timeline. Liam had left the Weir Lodge at midnight. The walk home along the river was 10 minutes. He should have been through his back door at 12:30 at the very latest. He should have been in the kitchen, kettle on, winding down the way he always did after his nights out. Instead, at 12:40 something was happening at Ockamore that set his dog off for 15 minutes straight. Whatever took place in that yard, or at that back door, or somewhere between the road and the house in the dark of that January night, Marley knew. He was there, he heard it, and for 15 minutes he told anyone who might be listening that something was very wrong. Nobody came, no one rang the Gardaí. The night went quiet again, and Liam Farrell lay at the back of his house in the dark and the January cold. Brendan Farrell said that since that, one of the worst things he carries is that he lived only minutes away that night. That if he had been there to walk his father home, Liam would have got in the door safely. He drives past that road now and thinks about it every time. But nobody could have known. That is the unbearable part of it. Not just Brendan, but for everyone who saw Liam that night, waving as he passed and thought nothing of it. How could they have known it was the last time? Sunday, the 12th of January, 3:30 in the afternoon. A call went out among the family. Daddy is on the ground. Liam was discovered unresponsive at the rear of his house at approximately 3:30 that Sunday afternoon by his son and daughter. When they got to Ockamore, the house was locked. They went around to the back. There was blood on the outside handle of the back door. They found him at the rear of the house on his back, wedged into the corner against the wall. His head was pressed so tightly against it that the family could not tilt it back to attempt mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. He was cold. He had been there a very long time. The blood was everywhere. The family had one word for what they had found that day: carnage. RTE's primetime programme subsequently viewed the post-mortem photographs. They show extensive bruising in Liam's face, his left eye badly bruised, bruising to his hands, arms and legs, his toes cut and bleeding. In the ambulance on the way to Sligo University Hospital, a family member noticed what appeared to be a bone protruding near Liam's collarbone. It was mentioned at the time. It did not appear in the original post-mortem report. It has never been accounted for. His overcoat and blazer had been removed and rolled into tight bundles, one placed on each side of his torso. His shoes and socks were off, placed about 1.5 feet to 2 feet away. His tie, still knotted, soaked through in blood, moved to his left side. His collar pressed back down. His watch was broken. In his hand, Liam Farrell was clutching a torn €5 note. His wallet was gone, several €100, and it has never been found. His house keys were on the ground, just inside the entrance to the property, stained with blood. The family also say that the gate between Liam's property and Brendan's house next door was standing wide open when they arrived. That gate, they say, was never left open. Liam was meticulous about this. Brendan's sister had specifically closed it the week before. On Sunday afternoon, it was open. A neighbour had seen a car parked at the front of Liam's house on the Saturday night with the lights on. 7 lights burning throughout the house, as the family would later count, in a house belonging to a man who never left more than one small light on. When the Gardaí arrived, the house was sealed off. A cordon went up, and Liam's body was taken to Sligo University Hospital. He was pronounced dead that evening. Before 5 o'clock, detectives from Carrick-on-Shannon arrived and the area was declared a crime scene. While the family were still at the house, a car pulled up across the road. A woman got out. The family describe her as blonde, late 30s or to early 40s, holding a silver vape. She walked over and asked what was going on. She was told an elderly man had been found injured. She did not respond further and drove away in the direction of Longford. The family have spoken about that interaction. They found the matter-of-factness of it and the absence of any reaction to what she had been told unusual given the circumstances. The Garda Serious Crime Review team have asked anyone who was travelling the Longford-Leitrim Road that Sunday afternoon and who may have had dashcam footage to come forward as part of their efforts to build a full picture of who was in the area that day. Then the investigation that followed began to go wrong in ways that the family could not have anticipated. That evening at Sligo University Hospital, a routine post-mortem was carried out on Liam Farrell's body. Not a forensic autopsy, a routine post-mortem. The pathologist was Professor Paul Hartle. Professor Hartle was told that Liam Farrell was found face down. He was not face down. He was flat on his back, jammed into a corner. That is what the scene photographs show. That is what the family found, and that is not what the pathologist was told. This matters enormously, this bit of detail, because when a pathologist is told an elderly man was found face down after a sudden death, the injury picture reads in a particular way. Bruising to the face becomes consistent with impact from the fall. Injuries to the hands become instinctive bracing on the way down. A heart attack, a fall, tragic, explicable. Professor Hartle later gave evidence at the inquest. He told the jury he had not been informed the scene had been treated as potentially suspicious. Had he known, he said, he would have refused to carry out an examination and insisted on a forensic pathologist. He had not seen the scene photographs. He had no knowledge that Liam's clothing had been removed and arranged around him. None of that information reached him. The post-mortem concluded that Liam Farrell died from severe coronary artery disease, a heart attack. The injuries were attributed to the fall, and because the death was not classified as suspicious, The full forensic process that follows a suspicious death did not happen. The scene at Ockamore was then released back to the family too quickly. In their grief, preparing for a funeral, they did what any family would do when nobody tells them otherwise. They cleaned up. Brendan's son-in-law scrubbed blood off the walls and door handles. Inside, the family had found a mop and a bucket filled with blood. They found shards of timber, broken and bloody. A tea towel on the ground that appeared to have been used to clean something up. All of it removed before it could be tested, because nobody told the family to leave it where it was. There is another failure that the family have raised consistently. When Brendan performed CPR on his father at the scene, his DNA was on the body and everywhere around the house. The Gardaí never took a DNA sample from Brendan for elimination purposes. Without that baseline, any DNA recovered could not be properly distinguished. Was it Brendan's from the resuscitation, or did it belong to someone else? Without the elimination sample, you cannot know. And without knowing, you cannot use it. A family member had the presence of mind to take photographs before the scene was disturbed. Those photographs showed footprints in the wet January grass. Not walking prints, leaping prints, long, striding and deep. Brendan's son and his brother, both tall men, tried to match the stride patterns afterwards and had to break into a sprint to reach the next print. Those footprints had never been cast or preserved. As I mentioned briefly before, there were 7 lights burning in the house of a man who never left more than one on. Those switches were not forensically swabbed. CCTV footage from the village and local businesses was either not retrieved in time or was too poor in quality to be usable. The footage that might have shown who was in Ruski that night is gone. A file went to the Director of Public Prosecutions. No prosecution was directed. Nobody was arrested. No suspect was ever identified. Liam Farrell was buried. The case, to all appearances, was closed. But his family were not finished. Now, I want to be precise about what follows. This is the Farrell family's account, based on what they personally witnessed, photographed and stated in testimony and to the media. I am not presenting it as established forensic facts. But the Garda Serious Crime Review team is treating this death as suspicious, and the family's observations are central to their active review. Let's start with what the family found and what they have said about it ever since. Liam's overcoat and blazer had been removed and rolled into tight bundles, one placed on each side of his torso. His shoes and socks were off, placed neatly 1.5 to 2 feet away. His collar had been pressed back down. His tie was still knotted despite being soaked through in blood and had been moved to his left side. The family say that what they found did not look to them like the aftermath of a medical emergency or a fall. They say it looked to them as though the scene had been arranged. That is their account, and it is the account that they have given consistently since January 2020. The Garda Serious Crime Review team is aware of it and is treating it as part of this active review. The family do not believe Liam's death was natural. That is their position, and they have held it for 6 years. Then there is the motive the family believe was at the root of it. A rumour had circulated in Ruski that a cousin of Liam's had sold land for €2 million and that Liam had inherited a significant portion of that. The family say the actual figure he received was much closer to €50,000. But the rumour was out there and people believed it. The perception in the area was that Liam Farrell had come into serious money. And on top of that, he was known to carry several €100 in cash on a night out. He was reliable, predictable and known to have money on him. That is a dangerous combination for a man walking home alone after midnight on a rural road. He was found clutching a torn €5 note, but his wallet was gone. The family believed what happened is clear from that image alone. Someone tried to take the wallet. Liam held on. There was a struggle. The note tore. The wallet has never been found. The River Shannon was searched. The surrounding bogs were searched, but nothing. The family also believe the broken watch is significant. A watch can stop when it sustains a severe impact. Whether that happened during a fall or during something else is exactly what the current forensic examination is intended to determine. The 7 lights. A man who never burned more than 1 light in his house, found with 7 on. The family believes someone was inside that house while Liam lay outside, moving through the rooms, going through drawers, looking for the money the rumour said he had. 7 switches, not one of them forensically swabbed. The bone a family member noticed in the ambulance protruding near the collarbone mentioned at the time, absent from the original post-mortem report. An injury observed in the immediate aftermath of Liam's death that did not make it into the official documentation. The gate between Liam's property and Brendan's next door, the family say, was standing open when they arrived. It was never left open. Brendan's sister had specifically closed it the week before. None of this is proven. I'm not telling you what happened to Liam Farrell. I'm telling you what his family have observed, what they documented, and what the Serious Crime Review team is now treating as live lines of inquiry 6 years later. None of it has been disproven, and the question of why none of it was properly examined in January 2020 is one the Farrell family have been asking ever since. The Farrell family did not just make claims, they went and found evidence to support them, and what that evidence showed is significant. They commissioned an independent forensic review by Professor Jack Crane, the former state pathologist of Northern Ireland. The family brought him in to examine what the original post-mortem had concluded and what the photographs and records showed. Professor Crane's conclusion was significant. The pattern of injuries to Liam's face and the wounds on his hands were, in his assessment, consistent with an intruder confrontation and a physical assault. He identified what he described as defensive wounds, injuries to the hands and fingers of the kind a person sustains when they raise their hands and arms to protect themselves from blows coming towards them. The kind of injuries, in other words, that are consistent with a man who fought back against someone. That is a former state pathologist, a man with decades of experience in exactly this kind of analysis, looking at the evidence and concluding that what he sees is consistent with Liam Farrell being assaulted. Professor Linda Mulligan, the current state pathologist, had also reviewed the original post-mortem ahead of the inquest. Her findings were carefully worded, as these reports obviously must be, but the substance of them was stark. The pattern of injuries on Liam's face and hands raised concerns. The bruising to the hands and fingers may be defensive injuries, and critically, the involvement of another party could not be excluded on the basis of the original autopsy report and the photographs provided to her. She laid out 2 possible scenarios. In the first, Liam suffered a heart attack, fell, and the injuries resulted from the fall itself. In the second, the injuries were caused by an assault, which then triggered the cardiac event. She could not determine which of those scenarios was correct. She could not rule out either. But she said clearly on the record at a formal legal proceeding that a third-party involvement in Liam Farrell's death could not be excluded. Let me say that plainly. The state pathologist could not rule out that someone hurt Liam Farrell. There was also something that emerged at the inquest that the family found deeply troubling, and I think they were right to find it troubling. The photographs presented to the jury during proceedings were, in the family's account, tiny, miniature. Brendan described them as looking like a child had taken them. It was only when the family had copies privately enlarged that the detail became clear enough to see properly. The blood on the timber, the bloodied cloth on the ground. Their concern was what the jury had been shown, and whether those miniature images conveyed the full reality of what that scene looked like. What the jury were shown and what the full photographs revealed were, apparently, not the same picture. The family have never received a satisfactory explanation for why the photographs shown at the inquest were the size they were. The Garda investigation in the months after Liam's death involved up to 100 interviews. It was during COVID, during the lockdowns. But the outcome was the same regardless. Nobody was arrested, there was no prosecution, no suspect. Then things went quiet. But the Farrell family did not go quiet. Brendan became a driving force of the campaign. He and his siblings pushed and lobbied and refused to let the story disappear. They gave interviews, raised it with public representatives, commissioned the independent review from Professor Crane, and sat through every day of that inquest. When Brendan heard the news that the exhumation had been approved, he said he sat in his car and he was shaking. "This is our father," he said. "This is Daddy, a man who lived a simple life, a man that was loved by his neighbours, his family and his friends, a man full of life. He still cannot believe," he said, "that they are in this situation." That is what 6 years of this looks like from inside a family. Their campaign found political support. TDs raised the case in the Dáil and pushed for ministerial engagement. The family met directly with the Minister for Justice, Jim O'Callaghan. In September 2025, RTE's primetime broadcast a major investigation into the case, titled Someone Knows. It laid out for a national audience what the family had been saying for years. The questions about the scene, the missing wallet, the DNA failure, the face-down error, the footprints never cast. 6 years of a family being told there was nothing to investigate. The public response was significant. In October 2025, Garda Commissioner Justin Kelly appointed the Serious Crime Review Team, led by Detective Chief Superintendent Des McTiernan, to take over the file. On the 30th of March 2026, the case featured on Crime Call on RT1. The first time the Gardaí had made a formal public appeal for information on national television in the 6 years since Liam died. And in that same month of March 2026, the Minister for Justice signed the exhumation order. 6 years of refusing to accept an answer that made no sense had brought the Farrell family to this point. Now, I want to come back to the inquest at this point because this sits at the centre of everything that followed, and it is worth taking the time to understand what it actually found and what that means. The inquest into Liam Farrell's death returned its verdict in September 2024 of an open verdict. An open verdict in Irish law is not a neutral finding, and it is not an inconclusive one. It is a specific legal determination with a precise meaning. It means the jury, having heard all of the evidence placed before them, could not establish the cause and circumstances of death to the required standard of proof. It means the evidence did not allow them to conclude that the death was accidental or natural or self-inflicted, or the result of an unlawful act by another person. It means that the circumstances of Liam Farrell's death remain formally and officially, and in the eyes of the Irish legal system, unexplained. Think about what the jury heard. They heard Professor Hartle explain that he had been told Liam was found face down when he was not, and that this information had shaped his entire examination. They heard Professor Mulligan's evidence that the injury pattern raised concerns that a third party could not be excluded. They heard about the clothing that had been removed and arranged, the missing wallet, the broken watch, the blood on the walls of the house. They considered all of it, and they came back with the only honest verdict the evidence allowed them to reach. They could not say this was an accident. They could not say it was natural. They could not say it was anything other than unexplained. And in returning that open verdict, they were in effect saying to the state, this is not resolved. Look again. For the Farrell family, after years of being dismissed and told there was nothing to investigate, the open verdict was vindication, not just emotionally, but legally. It was the key that unlocked everything that followed. Without an open verdict, the Garda Commissioner would not have had the legal or institutional basis to appoint the Serious Crime Review Team. Without them, the Minister for Justice would not have been in a position to authorise an exhumation order. Every development in 2025 and 2026 flows directly from what that jury decided in September 2024. The Farrell family fought for years just to get to that inquest, and then, when the verdict came back in their favour, they had to fight again to make sure something was actually done about it. The exhumation began at 8 o'clock on the morning of Friday the 10th of April 2026 at Cloonmorris Cemetery in Bornacoola, County Leitrim. The Garda Technical Bureau carried out the procedure. Professor Linda Mulligan, the Chief State Pathologist, was present throughout the entire process. An environmental health officer from the HSC attended, as the relevant protocols require. The appropriate undertakers assisted, and members of the Farrell family, including his 5 children, were there. The operation concluded just before 11 o'clock in the morning. Liam's remains were placed in a private ambulance. 2 unmarked Garda vehicles escorted it to Dublin, where a full forensic post-mortem examination was carried out. The examination that should have been carried out on the night that Liam died, more than 6 years earlier. Detective Chief Superintendent Des McTiernan, who heads the Serious Crime Review Team, issued a formal statement on behalf of An Garda Síochána. The exhumation process, he said, is an attempt to progress the case forensically in order to get clarity on the circumstances surrounding the death of Liam Farrell on the 12th of January 2020. He also made a renewed public appeal, the most detailed one yet. He described Liam carefully and specifically for anyone who might have encountered him on that final night. 6'2", a fit man despite his years, wearing that dark suit, that light blue shirt and that dark wine-coloured tie. He appealed directly to anyone who was in Reynolds Pub or the Weir Lodge on the night of Saturday the 11th of January 2020 and who remembers seeing Liam Farrell there. He appealed to anyone who saw Liam leave the Weir Lodge after midnight, cross the road to the riverside and begin the walk home along the river. And he made a broader appeal to anyone at all, anywhere, who has any information about what happened at Ockamore that night or about the circumstances of the discovery of Liam's body the following afternoon. The appeal is still live. The investigation is active and ongoing. The Serious Crime Review Team is still speaking to people in the Ruski area. The results of the new forensic post-mortem examination have not yet been made public. The Garda appeal is explicit. Someone out there has information. That is what Detective Chief Superintendent McTiernan has said publicly and what the Farrell family have believed from the very beginning. Someone knows. Somebody holds the truth. Liam Farrell's brother Mel turned 90 this May. He is heartbroken, the family say. He is waiting for answers and he is not getting any younger. In the early days after Liam's death, the family spoke about Marley still being at the house in Ockamore. The dog who barked in the night at 20 to 1 on a January morning, who knew something was wrong and told anyone who might be listening. The family said they could find comfort in that. I'll be honest with you, this one got to me. Maybe because Liam represents so many of our older generation, men and women who worked hard their whole lives, raised their families, looked after their sick spouses without a word of a complaint, went to mass, had their few pints at the weekend and walked home alone in the dark without a second thought, because that was just life, because they never imagined they had anything to fear. And maybe because of the 6 years that followed, the fighting and the pushing and the lobbying, just to get someone to take a second look. No family should have to do that. Not in this country, not for anyone. As I said, Liam Farrell's brother Mel is not getting any younger and he would love to have the answers. So, if you were in Ruski that night, if you were in Reynolds or the Weir Lodge, if you saw anything at all around Ockamore that weekend, or if you have been carrying something you have never said out loud, now is the time. You can contact the Garda Confidential Line at 1-800-666-111. All information is treated in the strictest confidence. You don't even have to give your name. I will be back when there is more to tell, and in this case, I believe there will be. Take care of yourself until the next time.
So guys, that's it for today's episode of the Ireland Crimes and Mysteries podcast. Again, thanks for your listenership, and don't forget to subscribe to the show and hit that auto download so you never miss an episode. Until the next time, keep your eyes open and your mind curious. This podcast has been compiled from information gathered in the public sphere, like news articles, documentaries, and open source material that can be found on the web. Everything in this podcast is alleged unless a conviction has taken place.